Hey, it's Codex, and today I'm doing What If Soccer Wasn't Useless? Yay! The fanfic is called Kill Your Heroes, and it is written by evil is a relative term. It's time to stop waiting for other people to save you. A story about fear, resilience, and uselessness. I mean, Sakura. She isn't supposed to be useless in this one. So, yay to all the people who don't mind Sakura. um, I am 50 subscribers away from 1,000. It would be a really cool thing to start off the year with 1,000 subscribers. It's like the best New Year's gift. I would really appreciate it if you guys do. And like I said, when we hit 1,000 subscribers, I will get a new mic, and like a week after, not like tomorrow. It's coming soon, okay? And I will start doing higher quality videos, maybe animations behind these, or maybe voice acting. So I would really appreciate it if we could hit 1,000 subscribers. Also, Shadow Sovereign. I was supposed to give you a shout out like 5 days ago. I apologize. Here's your shout out. You're really cool. I appreciate how like you click and comment on the videos as soon as you get the notification. It means a lot to me that like as soon as I upload videos, there's like 5 people already there. It it just feels nice, man. Thank you guys. You guys are great. Let's do this. Oh yeah, comment Q, like the video for this to continue. We need 30 likes. Please comment some anime suggestions. I'm standing on 1,000,000 lives. It's not my favorite, but like it's not that bad. I want something good. I'm also gonna start watching Jujutsu Kaisen. Tell me if I should or not. I heard it's pretty good. Anyway, let's get into this. If Naruto and Sasuke die, I'm not continuing this series. It's titled Kill Your Heroes. If Naruto and Sasuke die, I'm not continuing. I don't care. The series is called Naruto. You can't freaking kill him, alright? Kill Your Heroes, Chapter 1. Baptism or what lurks under the bridges. That's a weird chapter title. Yeah. Sakura shadowed Tazuna through the crypt settlement, feeling disgusted and being ashamed by that disgust. Everything was worn and dirty, from the buildings to the people, and there was a small, alarmed voice in her head shrilling, "Don't touch anything." It was silly because she had done her fair share, more than her fair share. She sometimes thought of crawling belly down in a questionable smelling mud, but this wasn't a survival exercise. People lived here every day of their lives, bargaining for vegetables she shouldn't have thrown away without first putting on gloves at home. It wasn't quite scholar, as there was evidence of effort to keep things maintained and having once been prosperous, but it was a tired effort and wilted as the tops of the carrots on offers. The farmland here was poor, the rivers and winds carrying too much salt for much about but the mangroves and buttonwoods to flourish. Once the rivers had offered up fish, the buttonwood on high-grade charcoal, and the pines further inland tar and resin that had been used in local shipbuilding and repair, as well as being shipped elsewhere, but when Gato had come, he had raised the harbors. Now only his ships could travel freely, crippling the trade that had sustained the islands. Most of the families that lived here, the ones that hadn't been able or willing to smuggle themselves elsewhere, were making do with what they could coax into growing and the fish they could no longer sell. It was enough to survive, but it was a life absent of luxury or fiscal security. It was Sakura's first real brush with poverty, and she really really didn't like it. Not the sight of it, nor the smell of it, strong enough to make her want to crinkle her nose up in a distaste. Damn, and fish and tar. Nothing at all like home. But she persevered, mostly. She kept an eye of the children who'd paused in their play to stare at her. She didn't have much spending money on her. Their operating funds doled at the discretion of their Jonin sensei while they were on a mission. But ninja tools were temptation even to village children who had plenty of actual toys. As they approached the worksite, Sakura trailed even further behind the bridge builder. She felt awkward standing on the periphery, but she couldn't exactly help out either, because it was well beyond her current skills to both help and keep a watchful eye on their surroundings. And even if she'd been able to, all her training at the academy had only prepared her for demolishing bridges, not building them. Even that had been limited to a brief mention, as apparently their instructor didn't think adding a working knowledge of serious explosive alongside the myriad of bladed objects was a wise decision. So she just sort of hovered, grinding on sandal's foot against the concrete while she eyed their surrounding. She'd covered guard duty quite a bit in class, as it was one of the jobs most often hired out to ninja, but she'd expected a Jonin sensei to be there and instruct her while she was in the field. It was one thing to have run through test scenarios within the grounds of the academy and sometimes in and around the familiar streets of Konoha, but another entirely to actually be guarding someone. Technically, she wasn't supposed to be eligible for solo guard duty until she made tuning or met certain requirements as getting and received authorization to do so. But Kakashi Sensei was their field commander, so she couldn't exactly argue with him. And really, when she hadn't had time to think it through, she had been flattered. Now, however, she was mostly bored. This was her second day of this, but even though it was only morning, she was having flashbacks to how the day before had dragged on and on. The building team working from first light to dusk in order to make as much progress as possible. It meant even taking her midday meal here on the bridge and reassigned herself to a few unobtrusive bathroom breaks. The only enemy she had been asked to confront was sleepiness, but she didn't know whether to be grateful for that or not. Tazuna apparently hadn't been completely trusting of Kakashi Sensei's list and impressive endorsement of Sakura as a bodyguard. So her pouch contained not only her standard ninja tools, but also a few magnesium flares that were bright enough to be seen even through dense fog. Apparently, the residents carried them in case of emergency while fishing, and they did have a certain telltale odor that she hoped wouldn't take up permanent residence in her bag. It was bad enough this town reeked like fish. What would Sasuke-kun think if she did? He might finally notice something at least. The sour, mood-killing, logical part of her brain prompted. I didn't know she had a logical side. This is good to know. As she rushed to reassure herself otherwise, because Sakura had never not achieved something she'd work hard for, and she'd never worked as hard for something as she did for Sasuke-kun. She did a perimeter sweep. She walked the bridge, peering down into the water, brow creasing as she considered how easy it might be for someone to approach into the heavy fog that wouldn't bear away until well in the day. But it wasn't like she could scale down the bridge support and take a look around, except she recollected suddenly she could. It wasn't a tree, true, but the principle should be the same. It might even be easier since it wouldn't have the same faint buzz of interference as a living tree. Neither Naruto or Sasuke had said anything about it, but given how much more trouble they were having, she had her first real um, challenge to her assumption that Sasuke had chakra control much finer and much more developed than her. She had never really been better than Sasuke at anything before, except speaking in Keigo, and she didn't really know how she felt about that. The cry of a passing bird disrupted her reverie, and she shook free of her Sasuke crowded thoughts, turning away from her view of the water. It'd be fine. Expect Except she hesitated, glancing back over her shoulder with the view as perfectly obscured as it was, and with the support of the bird so vulnerable, her mind couldn't help but recall the easy, effortless way that the two Jonin had used the surface of the water as their battlefield. Kakashi Sensei had been certain Zabuza would be too injured to be a threat, but there had been the willowy hunter nin that wasn't, and Gata was a rich man who had already sent one other team to attack them while they were on the road. Rumors said he traveled with bodyguards as well, and brought out his thugs whenever the townspeople began to show signs of rallying themselves. No, a lack of personal wasn't his problem. A cold breeze swept in off the water and made her shiver. Though not the temperature, Sakura suddenly felt very vulnerable and no longer too reassured by Kakashi Sensei's judgment. Now that the possibility had reared its head, she was compelled to check. It was just like the monster she had been convinced had lived under her bed as a child. Her parents were completely undistinguished, but absolutely this dedicated ninja, and after her Baba had passed away, she'd spent many nights where she was the only one home, so it had fallen to her to check, as she'd found it impossible to sleep otherwise. This was the same kind of feeling, like something had reached into her chest and was squeezing. But she couldn't turn away, not now. Part of it was because of that old childhood terror that if she turned her back, something terrible might happen. Part of it was that this was her responsibility given to her by Kakashi Sensei. Sakura didn't shirk tasks assigned to her by her superiors. It wasn't in her character, even if she approached said task with a deep feeling of trepidation. She scurried over to Tazuna to explain what she was doing, so he wouldn't worry if she disappeared. But really, who was looking after who was looking after who here? And then she steeled herself to her task. At least with the tree, she had the advantage of staring at the bottom. The water looked very solid and very far below from her vantage point. But just like the tree climbing, it came easily to her. The worst part was that despite her feat's ability to defy gravity, her brain and dress wanted to succumb to it. So she had to ignore one and wrestle with the other as she scouted underneath the bridge. Her face burned from more than just the blood rushing to her head. It wasn't as if she wasn't wearing shorts underneath, but still. She decided that tomorrow, since Sasuke wouldn't see her anyways, she would wear something a little more suited to lurking under bridges and change before they returned to Tazuna's home. Not that there was anything particularly interesting to see underneath. Her paranoia turned out to be just that, and she was left feeling both sheepish and a little lightheaded. But when she sat out with Tazuna the next day, she wore a dark tank top beneath her dress. She'd never intended to see the light of day. She'd only packed it because she'd heard the mornings in the land of waves would be damp and cool, and she very simply believed in layering for warmth. Sase-kun didn't seem to be the type to find shivering cute, and no matter what Ino said about shivering burning calories, there were some lines she wouldn't cross. When they had nearly reached the bridge, she ducked behind a building so quickly, shook her dress, folding it carefully and stowing it in her pack. When she emerged, Tazuna had finished giving directions to his crew. As she approached him, she rubbed her hands up and down her exposed arms to generate warmth. "So keeping us safe again today?" Tazuna asked in her that way of his tone straddling the border between gruff teasing and straight out grunchiness. She smiled hesitantly at him because she honestly wasn't sure which one it was. "Yes, sir," she replied. "Well, get to it then," he said, waving her off. She stifled the urge to salute him sarcastically and walked off her perimeter. She glanced askance at barrels of something. She had guessed tar by the smell that had cropped up overnight along with coils of cotton and rope. She suddenly recalled a conversation she hadn't paid much attention to yesterday. Several of the men on the crew would be leaving in the afternoon to help other members of the community to do some repairs and maintenance on their shabby little fishing boats before storm season arrived. Tazuna had been irritated but grumbled something about understanding that the need to eat. When she was satisfied that no one had sabotaged the bridge during the night or set any traps detectable by getting senses, she gathered herself, pulled her hair up into a knot, and took that first unnerving step off the top of the bridge. Her stomach seemed convinced for a moment she would fall. She would fall and drown in the mist-covered water. She would die and never get even one date with Sasuke-kun. But she didn't fall, and she would win a date with Sasuke-kun. That determined, she took the steps that left her in a world where there was solid concrete beneath her feet, but there was a sea where the sky should have been. Plunging beneath the fog was like walking into a cloud, and would have been terrifyingly discerning if she hadn't had a strong sense of direction. She was certain there was a technique to avoid her blood draining down into her brain, but for now she had to be satisfied with walking quickly towards the pillar situated roughly in the midpoint of the current stretch of bridge, where she could at least be properly upright if she perched on the support beams. It was the ink she noticed first. Chakra-imbued ink, the kind ninjas use. And this ink, she understood in an instant as she glimpsed a pair of shinobi kneeling at the center of the constructed, fiddling with something, was meant to amplifying and direct an explosion. The first around her heart seemed to squeeze tight, and Sakura couldn't breathe for a long moment, couldn't think. Almost didn't have a presence of mind enough to keep her feet firmly planted on the underbelly of the bridge. But then one of them glanced up, his gaze catching hers. Okay guys, I'm gonna end it here. This actually seems pretty interesting. Yeah, I hope you guys can get us to 30 likes. I would like to continue this. This is a very well written story, and I will see you guys again today with more videos. Bye.
And today